Guess it's still good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to see all of you here. We're going to have just an amazing next hour, and I'm so glad that you could be here, whether you're joining us in the studio or online, for our first Insight Dialogue. As you heard, I'm Judith Rodin. I'm the president of the Rockefeller Foundation, and maybe some of you are thinking already, what's the gimmick? After all, Jerry Seinfeld, he rides in cars with his guests and he has coffee. Oprah gives out free cars. But here there's no gimmick. Those are great things they do, but that's not the kind of event we're planning today. We actually want Insight Dialogues to be measured by the strength of the ideas that we're really hearing and discussing today, and all of you were a part of that. And to stimulate your thinking, we've built a lineup of really extraordinary thinkers and doers, people who have been changing lives, and some are doing it on or off the stage, some are diplomats or social change leaders, others are pushing the forefront of innovation through social or regular entrepreneurship. We'll be discussing what they're learning and how they hope to change the world. We've created a space where our guests can talk with you about the things that matter to them, the passions that drive them, and the problems they're aspiring to solve. We're a philanthropy that really works at the front lines of trying to solve, I think, some of the world's most difficult problems. And we have the great privilege of talking to grantees and partners every day about these issues. But Insight Dialogues is really an effort to open these conversations to a wider community of change makers, including all of you here and those of you online. Through the leverage of our networks and also the fantastic reach of technology and social media, we know that these conversations will help spark in a person or a group maybe the next movement, invent the next solution, invest in the next amazing business that really can have transformational impact. We'll never know how this conversation actually produced broader change. Usually we're very metrics driven, but we're confident that if we put all of these ideas out into the universe, your ideas, the ideas of our wonderful guests, that they'll come back in ways that are greater and grander than we could dream. So we encourage you not to even wait until we're finished today to get involved. You saw that there are cards on your seat. Fill them out with any questions that you have for Robin, and we'll collect them during the conversation and try to get to as many of them as possible. Whether you're in the studio here or at home, you can tweet your questions to us at #RFDialogues. There will be videos from this conversation that will come online. Please share them with friends and colleagues. And when the lights go dim, think about how you can take what you heard to move the world forward in whatever way you can. Then we know that this will have been a successful event. So let's get started. I'm thrilled to be able to kick off these dialogues with an extraordinary advocate for some of the most vulnerable people in Africa, the award-winning actor Robin Wright. You've seen her, of course, as the formidable Claire Underwood in House of Cards. If you haven't, it's your loss. I think rarely has a more complex female character graced our television screens. And it's a credit to the talent and the depth that Robin brings to the role. On the show, you remember from the first season, that Claire is the former head of an NGO that brings clean water to communities in Africa. In real life, Robin's been championing a different kind of change, advocating for economic equality and the safety of women who are facing dangerous, corrupt, and even deadly conditions in the Congo. She has lent her voice as narrator most recently to the new documentary When Elephants Fight, which is an extension of the Stand with Congo campaign that Robin helps to lead. The New York premiere was last Sunday night, and I know she'll want to talk about with us about that as well. We look forward to hearing her insights about leadership, about power dynamics, and about what we can do to stand with Congo. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Robin Wright. Robin, we're also excited to have you here, so thank you very much for joining us, and I can't imagine a better way for us to launch our inaugural Insight Dialogue, and we're delighted to have you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's jump in with House of Cards, if we may, since I know that's how many people, at least, think of you initially, although I know they'll walk out of here thinking about so much more. Many have called Claire Underwood television's greatest female character. She certainly is one of the most complex. I read once that you said that you can't see her as evil and cunning, that you think she's utilitarian and efficient. Now, we all both love and hate Claire. So tell us what it feels like to play her.
I mean, I think that is probably the best definition for her, the efficiency. And what I meant by that is I can't look through that lens as an audience member would, because when you inhabit that person, you actually embody them, right? You have to be who they are. You have to feel what they feel. So I would never want to, assume that she's evil or venal, which of course she is. But, and it's interesting playing her because it's so conniving and it's so Machiavelli that when you're embodying somebody like that, you really go into the art of war. It's the book. I mean, it is. And that's where I think I start to learn by studying that person, that character, is what is the art of war.
Has playing Claire given you insights about politics? I mean, everybody is kind of scratching their heads right now about our political climate. Does it make you think about politics differently because you're living it in that role?
Yeah, I don't think it's a surprise to any of us how corrupt it is, our administration, including every other country's. But I think to put the operatic veil over, which is what the show produces, it's disheartening in a sense, because there is a truth to it. I remember sitting next to, I think it was Joe Biden's right-hand guy, and we were at the congressional dinner, and he, this guy from the South, he was like, I love that show. That thing, I'm telling you, it is so accurate. And I said, well, how much of it is accurate? He goes, about 99%. And I said, well, what's the 1% that's not accurate? And I was thinking, you don't throw a journalist in front of a subway. Maybe some did, not sure. And he thought about it for a minute, and he thought about it, and he said, you wouldn't get an education bill passed that fast.
It is amazing and a little scary. The other part of your role that's so interesting to so many of us is the leadership component. You are a leader. I mean, there's conniving and Machiavellianism and all of that, but you stand up there and you lead, especially in the later parts of the series. Is being in that role teaching you anything about women in leadership, or did you bring your own experience of leadership into it in how you play it?
Probably both. Being able to collaborate so closely with the writers, Kevin and I, it's just such a blessing to show up every day. We're 5:30 in hair and makeup, and we're rewriting the scenes that we're going to shoot at 7:30. It's a combination of, I grew up, or rather raised my kids in a county, in Marin County, where three of the most effective and influential women were from, Barbara Boxer, Feinstein. And growing up with those women and seeing that kind of leadership and seeing how they serve the public, that was inspirational as a young mother, and wanting to be a part of the community and engage with the community and get everyone to participate with you, serving the public.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could attest to that in House of Cards. I don't know how much they're helping the public. They're manipulating the public. And that is that sick and delicate balance of politics, right? Because people always ask, would you ever run for office? Not in a million years, but then again I say, I'm already doing theater. I don't need to do that theater.
But you've had these amazing, powerful women in the Senate, in leadership as role models, would you really never consider running for political office?
Never. Never. So I would support all the way someone else, but I don't think it's not my game.
Let's move to really thinking about ourselves as women. It's no secret when we think about and look at the data that women continue to face so many economic barriers. That's certainly true in the developing world where we both work, but it's equally true when you look at the data in the developed world. So there are gaps in every sector in wages and opportunities, from your business to my business to every business. Can you talk about some of the barriers that you faced in your career?
I feel that the barriers, the natural barriers, would be predominantly with mothers in the workplace. And I experienced that personally. I was thankfully in a 2-income family, and I had the blessing of not having to work financially. But I realized, looking back in my career of, now 30 years plus, because I wasn't working full time, I wasn't building my salary bracket. And if you don't build salary bracket with notoriety and, presence, then you're not in the game anymore. You become a B-list actor. So I got knocked out of the A-list category, saying, well, you're not box office material. You don't hold the value that you would have held if you had done 4 movies a year, like Nicole Kidman and Cate Blanchett did during the time I was raising my kids. And now, kind of on a comeback, at 50 years old, you're like, wow, now my career's back on track and able to work more fluidly. And then you establish yourself. So I think that barrier, it's a pandemic. I mean, let's face it, right? The inequality, what women earn 82% of what their male counterparts make, kind of on an average. And you do have to shame and guilt them into it. And I did it on my show recently. I was like, I want to be paid the same as Kevin, because it was a perfect paradigm, an example to use, because there are very few films or TV shows where the patriarch and the matriarch are equal. And they are in House of Cards. And I was looking at statistics, and Claire Underwood's character was more popular than his for a period of time in a season. So I capitalized on that moment. And I was like, you better pay me or I'm going to go public.
And they did. That's amazing. So they did. One thing women often hesitate to do is ask. And what you're saying is you must ask. It's inequitable, it feels unfair. And yet if you don't ask, you may be part of the problem rather than part of the solution. And I think that's a difficult thing for many women to really understand.
Right. Gloria Steinem has that great quote about, it's not about learning, it's about unlearning.
Yeah.
And I think teaching society or teaching your boss, and yes, it's a male-dominant workplace society. It always has been. And that's just the history, and that's conditioning. So I think if women can continue to, yes, amplify their voice and demand in the great way that women can be strong and delicate at the same time, it's the push. It's how gentle and how forceful is that push, but it has to be unacceptable at this stage.
I still keep a New Yorker cartoon on my desk that has all men and one woman sitting around a boardroom table. And the woman has just spoken, and the man at the head of the table says, "That's a very interesting comment, Ms. Trigg. Now maybe one of the men would like to make it." Now, when I first cut that out, it was about 30 years ago. But there isn't a woman that I talk to, and I've been twice a CEO, who still somewhere has not had that experience. Has that kind of feeling ever emerged in all of the things you've been doing?
Absolutely. And back to, unlearning that tape, because it's a tape. And it's a tape for women as well, where we're so used to being the subordinate one. We're so used to taking that back seat. And it's just, how do we join forces with the male-dominant society? It's not about shunning or being, this, super industrial feminist, or it's been so bastardized, that term. And I just think we give men so much and you give us so much. We got to work as a team. Yeah. And it's a beautiful balance, right? We couldn't just be one gender. We'd be lost.
You're directing, I see, so many segments of House of Cards. I love when I see that you were the director of one I particularly loved. There's been so much attention, I think, around in the Oscar season about the lack of diversity, whether it's racial diversity or gender diversity, both in the nominations, but I think it's a reflection clearly of a broader conversation about Hollywood. What do you think the importance of having women directors is in television, in movies, and articulate for us why this conversation really matters so much?
It's tricky when they talk about gender specific, when they say, oh, we need more women in film. Well, yeah, clearly, because we are the minority. But I think we need all race, creed, cultures to implement their ideas and their perspectives into the industry and any sector, any business. But if we're talking about, we share stories for a living in this, whatever you call it, entertainment field that we're in. We're sharing. And it just provides balance to get more women, or, the man from Iran to make his movie and share his story. I just think we need more balance in general, male and female.
Will we get through that balance a broader set of perceptions about the reality of the human conditions rather than a more myopic view?
I think everyone can bring, because if you think, okay, you want to, especially for youth, right, encourage youth to step out of their comfort zone, seek education of other environments outside of your knowledge. That's what we as audience members are viewing when we see that film from Iran. We're like, wow, I had no idea that was your bubble. So we're basically just sharing our own environmental bubbles with one another. And if we can continue to shepherd that movement with the youth, in social media for causes that we're passionate about, which we're going to get into, and for social change, and for just art.
Let's turn to the causes that you're passionate about. You've been an extraordinary advocate for human rights, and we know that you first traveled to the Congo with the Enough Project's Raise Hope for Congo campaign. And you said in several interviews that the experience was life-changing. And tell us what you saw, who you talked to, what about it made it life-changing, and was there a moment, an aha experience, when you saw things differently, or was it an accumulation of just all of the events of that visit and afterwards?
Well, when I learned of this crisis almost 11 years ago, I was so disappointed in myself for not knowing that this was the worst war since World War II. Over 6 million people have died. It's the worst place in the world to be a woman. And I was holding my cell phone at the time, saying goodnight to my daughter, and realizing that the minerals coming out of the Congo that were housed in this device that we use every day for our convenience, I was holding war in my hand and violence against women. And I got on this campaign with Raise Hope, and I finally was able to travel to the Congo because I wanted to, as we all do, what can I do? I'm here with my God-given right of security and access to anything I want. Right? People, the civil service is so big here. And they had none. And I thought, well, is there a way that I can bring a message back to America? It's not just about writing a check, but how can we create social change? How, as freedom fighters that we are here. And I visited with women in these civil society groups. Basically, they're in safe houses. They've been raped multiple times. Their husband's been abducted by the militia. Sometimes their children had to witness the mother being raped. I mean, just horrific atrocities. And the hope in their eyes, like sitting there with them, some can't stand for 8 months to 18 months because they've had so many surgeries to repair. They can sit and sew. And when I looked in their eyes and I said, tell me your story, they shared it very openly. And I said, what would you like for me to do if I could do anything? And every single woman said the same thing. We don't have a voice. We're not heard here. Please be our voice when you go home. This natural resource that we have, it's a resource curse. And big corporate America is purchasing that, and we're dying. And we're not reaping the benefits. So I said, I'm going to do my best. I will go home and I will push this message like selling a used car. Just keep on and keep on.
Well, you mentioned that they can still be seated and sew, and you created a company, Pour la Femme, which is a socially conscious business that supports charitable organizations that directly help Congolese women. We know that in the Congo, as you said, they're some of the poorest women. They have no property rights. 2.5 million Congolese girls are out of school. And you've used sewing workshops to teach the women to sew so that they can start their own businesses, send their girls to school, succeed in a way that allows them independence and freedom from all of the things that keep them trapped. Why did you decide to start a business rather than a foundation or a nonprofit? This isn't a trick question.
Are you sure? I wasn't gaining enough momentum. After 10 years of doing it, and speaking in front of Congress a few times, getting right up to the door of Obama and Hillary Clinton and speaking to their right-hand people. Yes, we're going to do it. Hillary visited Congo in 2011, and she came back and said, this is the unfinished business of the 21st century. It's the worst place in the world to be a woman, and we're directly responsible because we're consumers. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
yes.
About DC though, what specifically?
Rockefeller has argued that market-based solutions are part of the solution, right. That we need completely fantastic foundations and completely fantastic NGOs, but unless we're also engaging markets and market-based solutions, because as you said, it's the markets that are part of the problem, can we kind of turn it on its head?
Well, and it's the most, to move with alacrity through this process. I thought, why don't I do something where I'm engaging the public? They are a participant, instead of just a nonprofit saying, hey, give me your money. Mm-hmm. All women, right, when we talk about the global economy and how we help the global economy so much, we're the biggest shoppers. So I was like, well, it represents and symbolizes security and comfort, pajamas. Being in bed feels good, you feel secure. Mm-hmm. I wanted to give that metaphor to the women of Congo, and I always wanted to build the perfect pajama because I could never find it. And I thought, well, have them work in concert where women are going to want to buy this product. It's beautiful, it's sexy, they feel good in it. And every time they purchase a pair of PJs, they know they're helping a woman in need. So I just thought, just connect the dots, because we are consumers. We're always going to be consumers. But if you know you're doing something socially conscious while wearing a pair of pajamas, get on it.
It is fantastic. So I don't know how many people in our audience know what you talked about in terms of the minerals, actually. It's said that 30 to 60% of what's in our consumer electronics, what's in our pockets, are extracted in the Congo, often to the horrible detriment of the women that you see there and those who have been so demoralized and demeaned and degraded in the process. Do you think we as consumers are educated enough about the products we buy? And if not, whose responsibility is it to make us know that?
We are not educated enough what we're purchasing. We don't know some of the clothes that we're wearing right now could have been built by, child labor. But this is where, for instance, Stand with Congo, which is this organization now I'm a part of. You can literally download the app, and it gives you a list of publications, what's clean, what's not clean, what's in the phone you're carrying right now, in your iPad, and your computer. And it's about making that reach, which is what this campaign is about, is to continually spread the message, to investigate by going on Stand with Congo app and going, hey, I want to know what I'm holding. I want to know how responsible I am as a consumer. Then you, as the consumer, put pressure on that company by clicking a button on this app saying, yes, I want my electronics company to know I care. I want to clean up the trade. It's like blood diamonds. It's exactly the same. We're trying to clean up the mineral trade.
So this is a critical app, Stand with Congo. We should all feel responsible for knowing what's in the products we buy. And it is true. It is like blood diamonds. It's like the pressure now on the oil industry, the coal industry. We as consumers, we as citizens have not only a right, but an obligation, you're saying, to really make sure that we not only know, but then we learn how to take action and really use it to make a difference. You have a new documentary that you narrated, and I know did the executive production on When Elephants Fight. It is to raise awareness around these issues and so many issues around the abundance, the tragedy of the abundance of these minerals in the Congo, and both the illegal and the illicit trade, let alone the impact on women. What attracted you to the project? What do you think, maybe even more broadly, the role of documentary film is in challenging and educating the public towards action?
It's the most comprehensive piece of film I've ever seen on the crisis and the history of Congo, because it goes way back to King Leopold and the rubber industry, and they've had a number of natural resources, just abundantly rich, this country, and that the people are getting nothing from it, but war-torn country and raping and pillaging, it's insane. And I think that movement in general, with social media today, that kind of reach that we have to access people and inform people, documentaries are incredible for that reason, because it's fictional, and information. And the biggest part, silence is apathy. And if you don't let your compassion win and become that proactive tool that drives us every morning, and I think, well, what motivates you to get up? What motivates me is to fix the broken and unresolved. And pushing messages through documentaries, social media, get engaged with the social change on the ground, the people that are making the change. Click on the Stand with Congo app. It's done for you. It's so easy. And that's what, J.D. Steer, who founded Stand with Congo, he's like, we have to create something that's easy because we are apathetic. It's easy to be apathetic. But how exciting and energizing when you get involved with something, you're like, that means something to me because I'm using this device. And every time I pick up that device, I know what's going on over there, and I feel dirty. I don't want to feel dirty anymore. Clean it up.
It's very, very powerful. You mentioned that you've been in Washington as an advocate. You talk to policymakers through your advocacy leadership, both in Congress, in the State Department, I know in the White House as well. What are you telling them to do? What do you want of them when you're advocating with them directly?
It's twofold, and I know it's going to take a lot of time, but not only for them to pass the Dodd-Frank bill, right? Just for that to occur was putting umpteen million phone calls in and petitions signed. So the people make the change. Movements make the change. And then we say, look at what we did. We've created a movement. We have masses of people that believe, and they're in this camp with us. Now you, policy change maker, you need to go to the electronics companies and put the pressure on them. Then it comes from the big boss. Then it goes in the New York Times. And it's a tier effect, and it's just pushing it up the pyramid. And then ultimately, God, wouldn't it be great if Obama, before he leaves, could convene the parties and barter some kind of deal with Kabila, who is the leader of Congo. And he's allowing this to happen. And he's pocketing this billion-dollar industry that his minerals produce. It's going in his pocket.
Absolutely. I think we're ready for our first question. We'll take a little bit of break in this extraordinary conversation. Aha. Our first question is a Twitter question from Ariana Huffington, who is our partner with the HuffPost. Robin, she wants to know, how can we in the media do a better job putting a spotlight on the global crises women face and also on the solutions underway? And it's a great question coming from
right.
The
we were
last
just
statement.
talking about
Absolutely.
Repetition. That's all it is. It's saying the same thing, delivering the same message of be proactive, kids get involved, and basically you have to be so convicted in that repetition, you can't let it go. Just like when you're raising a child or trying to keep your orchid alive. The minute you let it go, it dies. You gotta feed it, you gotta feed it, you gotta feed it.
Additional questions, keep sending them on Twitter. Make sure that we're getting your questions as well. Well, I told you there were no gimmicks, but I can't resist doing a lightning round before we get to the next set of questions. And so let me just ask you some quick questions and give me some quick answers.
Oh, no.
Who inspires you?
Compassionate, proactive people.
Who's your favorite actor of all time?
Can I have two?
Yes.
Okay. Tilda Swinton and Javier Bardem.
Good ones. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Oh my God, that's impossible. Wow, off the top of my head, Harold and Maude.
Great. If you weren't an actor, what profession might you be?
A refugee doctor.
What advice do you have for the women watching?
Of all demographics and you have to make noise. You have to make noise in every arena that we have covered today, because it is a pandemic that we want to break. The being secondary and not having your voices heard and not being treated as an equal and fighting for what you believe in, whether it's you and or your sister and brother and all over the world. And I think it's just make noise.
What person, dead or alive, would you like to have dinner with, and why?
Oh my God. Can I have two people
Yes.
at dinner?
Well, then we're going to have to set another place.
Satan and the Dalai Lama.
I once had a colleague, I'm a psychologist, who wanted to work on what makes some people a Milosevic and what makes other people a Mandela.
Exactly.
I think
That's it. Maybe they could work it out.
Exactly. Will Claire Underwood be America's first female president?
I don't know. Would you vote for her?
Somehow I think she's going to get it without being voted for.
Kind of like Trump.
Exactly. So no storyline you're willing to share?
Oh my God, I would be beheaded. I can let you know that.
Okay, let's go back to the audience questions then. Again, we're taking them both from the room and from Twitter. As a documentarian and storyteller, how much of your role do you see as that of a gatekeeper, striving to objectively shed light on neglected topics? Or how much of your role is based on advocacy, pushing forward a particular point of view or opinion? Which attitude and approach do you think honors your craft more?
Well,
That's a tough question.
That's good and complicated. The advocacy is basically, you're in the, it's almost like being in the caboose of a train. And that is what I do in my personal life. I'm an activist and I advocate, for this cause and for this social change. The craft that shepherds that movement is being an actor. And what that brings to the advocacy movement is huge. So I don't know, I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have my craft, if I didn't have some kind of notoriety and people are saying, oh, well, use your voice. You know what? Yeah, use your voice. If you are high profile enough and you can reach more people, I say go for it. I'm not interested in going on a red carpet to show the clothes that I'm wearing, and I'm not really interested in going on a red carpet to promote a film. I'm not into that. That's what you have to do. This stuff, I will use my name till the day I die, because it's creating betterment of people. Not a good
Who
one.
from your Congo travels have you become friends with and inspires you?
Oh, this guy, Fidel, he calls me the general, and he's the most amazing hero. He's a native Congolese man, father of 5 children, I think, 6 children. And he has been on this crusade for almost 20 years, fighting for his people. And he was the one that took us around Goma and Kivu and Bukavu, in dangerous zones. And just a fearless warrior. Loves his native country like no other. And they live in squalor and they have nothing, and they're so beautifully happy as a people together in their community. I'm like, I aspire to that, because we whine about a lot here, don't we? Wah, wah. And I see that, and I just a beautiful reminder of not only the intrepid nature of him, where he's never going to give up, the hope that he has.
Isn't it incredible? I experienced that too in our work in Africa. The indomitable optimism in the face of such extraordinary adversity. It's really so powerful and so inspiring.
And you think, well, how did they have it and we don't
Right,
sometimes?
Would I be able to feel that
Yeah.
way? It's totally amazing. So next question, what phone do you use? What companies are getting the
Exactly.
message on conflict minerals?
Oh, yeah, we've getting the whip out with Apple. I do have an Apple iPhone, and Apple is 90% conflict-free currently. They have moved up from 60%. So patience and being dogged, that's what we're doing in activism. It's that delicate balance of how much you push and how much you recede. But they're moving forward. Intel is 100% conflict-free. They are the biggest distributor of the chip, I think. that's huge that Brian, who is the head of Intel, came forward at the electronics show and said, I'm 100% conflict free.
So we should be all equally advocating as consumers for rewarding those
right?
who have made this change. That's part of our responsibility as well.
And then encouraging the others to follow suit. Yeah.
This is a very sweet one. What lessons are you teaching your children?
So many still. Gosh, that's tough, huh? You know, this generation, my kids' generation, they're in their early 20s. It's so unfortunate and kettle black. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I gave them too many options, whether it was what they wanted to eat for dinner or what they wanted to wear to school. And I basically, it's a disservice to them. So I'm trying to teach them to not be lazy and to not expect something for nothing. And I feel like, you know, I instilled a little bit too much in that by allowing them to be, I needed to be harder on them. And I'm teaching them that now, and man, it's hard when they're 22 and 25. Wow.
It certainly is.
Do it when they're 4 and 5.
Well, somebody snuck in a last question. Who would like you to be a UN ambassador to advocate for women? Have you ever considered that?
Oh my God, I could never. I sat on a panel at the UN with Samantha Powers. I was petrified. And I was like, I am so dumb. She is one of the brightest.
She is an amazing, formidable.
And she is so well versed in Africa. I'm like, I would never try to take that seat. I'd like to be next to her and just have her maybe she has a serum I could take that makes me Samantha Powers. Yeah.
Well, Samantha, I know, admires so deeply those who advocate for the causes that she's in a responsible position to deal with every day on behalf of the United States. And she and so many others who have been in that role where they really can interact with leaders of every country and bring to the fore such important issues. You know, people will often criticize the UN, and yet they have over and over again maybe not solved every issue, but certainly brought so many important issues to the fore. And with the Millennium Development Goals now being largely reached in many instances, and the Sustainable Development Goals ahead of us, they do play, I think, a really important role in our global community. All of you are playing a critical role in our global community. You wouldn't be here unless you were interested in really thinking deeply about how you, the work you do, those who you know, can help to make a difference in changing the world. It really does take all of us. Robin is so amazing in her generosity and her insights and the experiences that she's had and the attention that she's calling to issues that are all too easy to forget. Our electronics are very sexy. They're a critical part of our life, and many of us feel that we couldn't live without them. Well, there are a lot of people not living because of them. And so we need to really understand our role in this issue and so many other issues. So share further questions. Again, use RF Dialogues as a hashtag. We may pull Robin into answering, or some of our team will help as well. Contribute your ideas in the form of a blog post on the Huffington Post Contributors Network. They're looking forward to hearing from you and having you contribute and move the dialogue forward. Our website will have a video of this up very quickly so that you can share it with your friends and continue pushing out the ideas around Insight Dialogue. And then if you are in the studio, on your chairs, you'll also find more information about how to continue the conversation. We are so, so grateful. Please join me in thanking our wonderful Robin Wright.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks.